All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is November 18th, 2020. This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority held in Albany and remotely. Joining by in person in Albany is Chairman Bradley. Joining by video is Commissioners Fan and Ford. Staff and attendance, we have General Counsel Gary Meyerhoff by video and Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Adam Roberts by phone.
I'm here. Thanks, Donald.
Yep. So on today's calendar, we have 5 items, 3 requests for summaries of suspension from counsel's office, and 2 disciplinary matters. The first item is 16280 New York AX 1152029 Agua Azul Deli Grocery Corp.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bradley, Commissioner Fan, and Commissioner Ford. William Brennan for Counsel's Office. I'm here today to request that the board summarily suspend the licensee for blatantly violating Executive Orders 202.16, 202.43, failing to supervise the licensed premises, allowing on-premises consumption and gambling, as well as illegally selling prescription drugs at the licensed premises. The licensee, Agua Azul Deli Grocery Corp., has been licensed as a grocery store selling beer, wine products, and cider for off-premises consumption since July of 2004. The licensed premises is located at 35 Sherman Avenue, New York, New York. On November 15, 2020, Investigator Stravali and members of the NYPD COVID Task Force conducted an inspection of the licensed premises. During their inspection, Investigator Stravali observed 4 males lingering in front of the licensed premises, not wearing face coverings. Upon entering the premises, Stravali heard music playing and observed a group of 5 males and 1 female standing in the front area of the premises. 3 of the individuals had clear plastic cups filled with beer. Only 1 of the 6 individuals was wearing an appropriate face covering. Neither the employee behind the counter nor the cook were wearing appropriate face coverings. There was a clear plastic cup containing beer sitting on the counter. There was a locked box under the register. The employee, who identified himself as being in charge, refused to open the box to allow Stravali to inspect its contents. Detective Spano of the NYPD later recovered various illegal prescription drugs, including drugs for erectile dysfunction and antibiotics. The cook at the premises stated that the antibiotics were sold for 50 cents each. Behind the counter in the refrigerator were 2 large bins filled with assorted bottles of distilled spirits, which the licensee is not permitted to possess or sell under his license. Stravali also observed 2 operational gambling devices in a small room in the back of the premises. 2 open containers of beer were found in the room. It is clear that the licensee was operating the store, which held a grocery license, allowing sale of beer and wine products for off-premises consumption as a speakeasy, providing on-premises consumption, as well as permitting gambling and selling illegal prescription drugs. Based on Investigator Stravali's report, the photographs he submitted, as well as the arrest report provided by the NYPD, that this license has little regard for the governor's executive orders, the authority's rules, regulations, and guidelines governing his license. The way in which this licensee is operating the premises poses an immediate risk to the health of the licensee's customers, employees, and the general public. For these reasons, Counsel's Office requests that the board issue an emergency order suspending the license.
Thanks, Bill. One thing I would add for the members to consider is we now have in place a statewide curfew that essentially requires all businesses that could have on-premise service and liquor stores to be closed at 10 p.m. There is no such curfew on AX licenses. I think that there is a likelihood that those who want to drink after 10 p.m. might be looking for places that are open and selling alcohol. And the potential for mayhem in places like this is greater than ever. And it's as the numbers are spiking. And it's something that should bear on the members' consideration as well.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
Is there any history with this licensee, Counselor?
Yes, there is, Commissioner. In 2013, there was a sale to minor for which the licensee was assessed a penalty of $2,500. And back in 2005, there was an improper conduct, ironically, that was based on the arrest of one of the principals for operating a gambling machine or operation, if you will.
Thank you. No further questions.
Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
All right, so I'm going to call for the members' vote. Commissioner Fan?
Based on evidence provided by Council Brennan, it's clear that this location is presenting an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare. I therefore vote to summarily suspend their license.
Commissioner Ford?
Based on evidence presented by counsel, this place is definitely a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, so I vote to summarily suspend as well.
Chairman Bradley?
Based on the evidence presented by counsel, I vote to summarily suspend this licensee is clearly a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare.
All right. So next item is 1628P. That's Suffolk OP 1318122, 2095 Montauk Holdings LLC.
Hey, Donald. Chairman, Commissioner Ford, I'm going to recuse myself on this matter.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Tom, make sure you make a note of that for Tom.
Yes. Yes, sir. And who's the prosecutor on the case?
Is that you, Tammy?
Is that Best Pizza and Dive Bar? That's the one I have.
Yes, it is. Yep, that's the DPA.
I'm sorry, my apologies. Good afternoon, Tammy O'Hara for the council's office. And council's office submits the subject licensee, 2095 Montauk Holdings LLC, doing business as Best Pizza and Dive Bar, located at 2095 Montauk Highway, Amagansett, New York, to the members of the authority to consider an emergency order of summary suspension on its retail on-premises liquor license pursuant to Section 401, subsection 3 of the State Administrative Procedure Act. 2095 Montauk Holding LLC was issued their liquor license on January 9th of 2020, which expires on December 31st of 2021. And they currently have 3 principals of the location. The summary suspension comes for an incident that occurred on, I'm sorry, my apologies, November 15th of 2020. Police officers from the East Hampton Town Police Department entered the establishment in plain clothes, undercover. They observed approximately 20 patrons standing and consuming alcoholic beverages in and around the establishment. There were 10 patrons seated at the bar. There was no social distancing as is shown in the one of the attachments that was provided to the board prior to this meeting. There are 10 people seated at the bar, also not socially distancing and not wearing any masks. There were no patrons were observed eating. Additionally, the bartenders that were employed at the establishment kept removing their masks to talk to people, which kind of defeats the purpose of wearing the mask. And according to the police officers, it did not appear that this was a dining experience, in that, in addition to all of the observations that were made, the police officers were able to order and receive alcoholic beverages without being required to purchase substantial food in accordance with ABC rules and regulations. Additionally, there were no menus that were provided or available at the time that they completed the order. So the licensee was charged, and this is a notice of pleading that is finalized in compliance. They are charged with violating Executive Orders 202.16, 202.41, and 202.52. In addition to these charges, there are also two additional pending cases, one from November 8th of 2020 and one from July 11th of 2020. On November 8th, 1 week earlier, police officers responded to the location and observed approximately 50 patrons throughout the establishment. They had approximately 10 patrons outside on a deck, 20 patrons inside the establishment, the majority of which were not wearing masks, were standing around and drinking alcoholic beverages, and 5 patrons that were observed playing pool, again, without wearing any mask or with alcoholic beverages in their hand. Again, at that time, no food was observed being served, nor were any patrons observed eating. At that time, the manager of the establishment was advised of the COVID guidelines by the police officers and directed to the SLA website to keep abreast of current COVID rules and regulations. A notice of pleading was mailed out on November 13th of 2020. At this time, I don't have any information of when it was delivered or if it had been delivered prior to November 15th of 2020. On July 11th of 2020, this was a joint inspection with the East Hampton Town Police Department and SLA investigators. At that time, no EO violations were observed, but the pregnancy warning signs were now present, and there was alcoholic beverages being stored in an extension of the building, not a part of the original approved licensed premises. So they were charged with that. Given the fact that there has been a recent spike in cases across New York State as it relates to COVID, the licensee has failed to supervise the premises in a way that was designed to prevent the spread of COVID-19, a deadly virus. And this licensee had been warned at least one time prior, and clearly cannot be trusted to follow the law, even at a time when human life is so obviously depending on everyone standing together and applying the law to everyone. At this time, permitting alcoholic beverage purchases without food, allowing patrons to congregate in a small area and also congregate in a way that discourages social distancing, and just explicitly disregarding the executive orders and SLA guidelines that were based on guidance from the New York State Department of Health. This licensee presents, their behavior presents an imminent risk to the public health, safety, and welfare, and therefore I respectfully request that the members summarily suspend the license.
All right, Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
Yes, Tammy, you said they were licensed January 9th, 2020, this year?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And this is a full OP, not eating beer, nothing like that. It's a fully licensed premise.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
Hey, could you just clarify for me, in the most recent event, how many people were seen inside? I couldn't understand you. It was
Apologize. On November 15th, which is the most recent, there were 20 people inside of the establishment.
and then on the prior date, November 11th, how many people?
That would be November 8th, and there was 50 people total spread between the outside deck and inside of the establishment.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'm going to call for the votes of the members. Commissioner Ford,
Based on evidence presented by counsel, this licensee is clearly a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, so I will vote to summarily suspend.
Chairman Bradley,
Based on the evidence presented by counsel, this licensee has clearly become a risk very quickly to the public health, safety, and welfare, and I vote to summarily suspend.
all right, so the next item is 1628Q. That's Queens OP 1272684, Cheap Shots, Cross Bay, Inc.
Good afternoon, members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Margarita Marsico on behalf of counsel's office. I'm requesting that the members once again summarily suspend Cheap Shots CJ's Sports Bar located at 13709 Cross Bay Boulevard, Ozone Park, New York.
Margarita, can I stop you there? I'm sorry. Gary, can I get on the phone with you and Donald in a couple seconds?
Yeah, can you put it together?
Donald, you're here, right?
Yeah, I'm in Tom's office, so I had to.
Can you just walk down? I'll come down to your office and we'll call Gary.
All right, so we're going to go on a brief recess.
Dono, I'm just going to turn my camera off, but I'll be right here, okay?
All right.
Yeah, Donald, you should turn yours off too if you can while when he gets there. Thanks.
Yep.
And don't forget to mute, like me.
Recording.
All right, so after a, Commissioner Fan, are you? Commissioner Fan and Ford? All right, Commissioner Ford, you there?
Back.
About that, we're good to go.
Yep, so after a brief recess and conference with council, we're back on the record.
Thank you. So, council's office is requesting that you issue an order of emergency order summary suspension as to the licensee located at 13709 Cross Bay Boulevard, Ozone Park, New York. The members may remember that you previously summarily suspended this licensee on July 25th during the summer for a panoply of executive order violations. On June 27th, they were serving indoors when it was not authorized. They were not authorized to do so. They were not properly socially distancing patrons outside. They were not supervising patrons within 100 feet of the premise. On July 18th and July 19th, their employees weren't wearing masks. And again, they were basically not enforcing social distancing in the front area of the restaurant where they had built a platform. The members agreed to give them another chance after they submitted an offer in compromise, and the licensee received a $35,000 fine. They had also, prior to this settlement, they had some other adverse history. They had a prior sale to minor in 2018 and a disorderly premise charge in 2019. So Ava Serrano is a licensee principal. She's had this license since August of 2013. So with regard to what's going on now, we have a new pending notice of pleading that was issued by Alexander Lloyd as a result of an inspection that Investigator Stravali did on November 14th. That was Friday that the new law 202.72 went into effect at 10 p.m., which prohibited licensees from being open beyond 10 p.m. Investigator Stravali went at approximately 12:10 in the morning, and he got suspicious when he observed a male leaving the licensed premise. He noted that the window was frosted. He was able to peek through a small space outside, and he saw 7 individuals inside, 2 of whom appeared to be consuming bottles of beer. Then he saw Investigator Stravali observed a second male leave the premise. Then Investigator Stravali observed the lights go off, and he observed Louis Abreu, who's the husband of Ava Serrano, the licensee principal. He observed Mr. Abreu open the door for a female to let her out. Neither Mr. Abreu or the female were wearing masks. Investigator Rowley eventually spoke to Mr. Abreu, who appeared intoxicated. He also spoke to Ava Serrano, who was present, and she was also appeared intoxicated. She asked what the investigator asked why they were serving after 10, and initially he received various excuses, including the old and tried excuse that we were just cleaning up, and these are just employees and family members, hanging out. So when Investigator Riley said, "Well, you weren't just cleaning up, I observed people drinking," that's when Mr. Abreu admitted to the fact that it breaks his heart to force people out to the street at 10 p.m. Investigator Stavali observed that no one was wearing masks inside and there was no social distancing going on. And of course, I'm sure, it was widely reported in all the press about the fact that the law was changing on Friday at 10 p.m. And Mr. Abreu and Ms. Serrano did not indicate that they were unaware that the law had gone into effect. They just said they didn't want to abide by the law, in essence, when they responded to Investigator Stavali. So we issued the notice of pleading. There was a pending complaint about the fact that this premise was also not serving food, which, as Ms. O'Hara indicated, is a very serious issue. So on November 17th, 3 days later, at approximately 8:55 p.m., Investigator Stavali set up surveillance in front of the premise. At approximately 9:25 p.m., two investigators working in plain clothes entered the premise. They observed 4 patrons in the rear of the premise at a table. They observed 2 bartenders, a security guard. There was no sit-down food service. The bartender told them that the kitchen was closed. Perhaps because they were not sort of like neighborhood patrons that that these people were very familiar with, the bartender asked the investigators, told them that they needed to order some food, and that the only food that they had were chips for $3, which is obviously not substantial food. The investigators ordered mixed drinks and ate the chips. At approximately 10:04 p.m., the investigators paid their bill and left. After they left, they remained out in front and observed 1 additional patron leave the premise. And when the investigators left the premise at about 10:20, they didn't see anyone else leave, which means that 6 occupants were still inside the premise, which would have included 3 employees and 3 patrons. So, there's just simply no excuse for what's going on. This licensee, Ms. Serrano, presents an imminent threat. She can't even keep herself sober while she's, trying to allegedly supervise this premise. No one's wearing masks, and they're just, violating. I think they managed to violate nearly every executive order that's gone into effect during, all the phases of this pandemic. So for all these reasons, we're requesting that the members summarily suspend this license.
Yeah, and just to add, thank you, Margarita. When we learned that they had violated the curfew so thoroughly over the weekend, we were considering bringing the matter to the board at that point. But because we saw this other complaint about them not serving food, we thought we would just do another compliance check before bringing it to the board, and found that they were not in compliance. This after paying a substantial fine and essentially be given a chance to comply. They seem to have failed to do so. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
Yes, what date was it that they appeared before the full board that we agreed to a $35,000 fine to settle? Do you know what that is?
Oh, geez, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ford. I know that they paid on August 12th, and
okay,
I could try to maybe see if someone can look it up. I'm sorry. I the case number. I was trying to find the agenda number to make it easier for you, and I had difficulties finding the agenda number on that summary suspension.
I can find out later. Thank you. I have no further questions. Oh, when were they licensed, by the way? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Oh, in 2013, August of 2013.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
All right, so now I'll call for the votes of the members. Commissioner Fan?
What a depressing vote. Based on evidence presented by Council Marsico, it's clear that this licensee is just doing what he wants and ignoring the pandemic that is happening. Due to an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford?
Based on evidence presented by Council Marsico, I don't think there's any other option or choice but to summarily suspend this license.
Chairman Bradley? Chairman Bradley, I think you're muted.
Based on council's presentation and the submissions, it's clear that this licensee is still imminent threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, and should be summarily suspended again.
All right, so the next items are 1707 and 1707B. That's Queens RW 1284513. 1707 is an over from the last full board meeting. And Chairman Bradley, I believe you're accused.
Yeah, I'm recused from this matter because I was recused from the earlier vote on the summary suspension. So I'm actually going to leave. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, Chairman.
Thank you, Donald. These two cases were both heard at the same hearing by ALJ Stoll. We only had one of the two decisions at the last board meeting, which is why we put it over. And although it certainly wouldn't have been our intention, it appears that these two cases, which were heard together, were put into two different decisions by the ALJ because of his interest in moving forward on the cases that, on the charges that resulted in the summary suspension, even though in theory all of the charges then pending resulted in the summary suspension. So we have two decisions, but in the ordinary course, we would have had one opinion and for both cases and be treating it as one agenda item and assessing one piece of discipline for all of the charges that were sustained. The case agenda number 1707 is case 14-5205. There are 12 charges. The ALJ sustained all of the charges except 1, 2, and 3. And the second case, agenda item 1707B, is 7 charges. The ALJ sustained charges 2, 3, and 7 and dismissed the other charges 1, 4, 5, and 6. So I guess the first thing for the board to consider is whether or not it will abide by the ALJ's decision on which charges were sustained and which charges were dismissed. So why don't we start with that?
All right. So Commissioner Fan, do you just uphold the recommendations of the ALJ?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ford?
Yes, I will go with the recommendations of the ALJ as well.
All right, and also, are you both going to consolidate into both cases into one penalty?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
And,
so I was just
And
gonna,
the offer is 35,000. Are there what bells and whistles with it, or just 35,000?
there's no offer. This is a hearing decision, 2 hearing decisions. So there's not this is not.
There's no. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought that.
But let me continue just for the record. It appears that the the conduct at issue that was sustained covers 4 incidents, all relating to executive order violations. The first NOP actually was sent on July 17th, which is a week before the last date of EO violation incidents, July 24th, which is actually what precipitated the suspension on, I believe,
July 28th.
July 28th. Also, just for the record, there is another case in the pipeline that predates COVID-19 that was scheduled for hearing in March, and that hearing was adjourned because we adjourned all hearings in March, and we have not been hearing non-COVID related cases. So while the board needs to consider discipline on these cases now and promptly decide it because they include charges that led to a summary suspension, that follow-along case at some point will go to hearing, and if charges are sustained there could be discipline in that case as well. So the board should keep that in mind, although it certainly should not presume that any of those charges will be sustained. That'll be a matter that is addressed subsequently. So with that in mind, I guess the question is what discipline on the sustained charges?
All right, so with that, I'll call for the members' vote. Commissioner Fan?
I'm going to set the penalty at $20,000.
All right, and again, that's consolidating both cases, correct?
Yes, all 6 states.
All right, Commissioner Ford?
I mean, how much have they paid already? Let me see, 15,000 was it?
It's approximately 15,000 on, it's 15,500 on 3 separate cases that involve, I don't know, 4 or 5 incidents going back to 2016.
Okay. How was it canceling bond? I mean, they've got quite a list here.
Here's our issue. We don't have a tie-breaking vote, so we need the board to deliberate publicly and hopefully to come to a consensus on the discipline.
What did you say, Commissioner? You said 20,000?
I'm at 20,000.
I'll agree to that.
All right, so $20,000 for both. All right, so I have no further items on the agenda. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.